Right, good morning ladies and gentlemen. I've been asked just to hold for a couple of minutes while a few other people come in, but to be honest it would help me to put a bit of stuff into context for who's in the room and therefore just see either for questions or for examples if I can pitch things correctly. Of course I should start off by saying I'm Mike Nightingale, I'm going to be doing this presentation, but this is my opportunity to find out about you. So, who's involved in a major project at the moment? Who's involved in a really small project? Excellent. No less important. Probably my most complicated project was worth about 15k. Absolute nightmare for stakeholder relationships, but big doesn't always mean it's not always less simple. Who's in from, say, a major organisation or like large organisation here? So that suggests we've also then got pretty much a split of people, individuals, either here for study, individual contractors. Yeah, quite a few. Great. And then, who's here because they already know about Tideway and they want to find out more? And who knows nothing about Tideway at all? Excellent, right, for all of you, there's a little safety warning here. This is just before lunch. So, if you're here thinking this is something nice and easy just to support you as you come through to having your food, you do realise what the Tideway project is about, don't you? You know what it's going to be dealing with. So there's a health warning for the first 5 or 6 minutes if that's the case. Then you have a few minutes just to get ready for food. Okay. Right, so I should do a bit more in terms of introductions. So my name's Mike Nightingale. I'm a senior consultant with Arcadis. Arcadis is it's a large consultancy doing a lot of work for major projects and organisations in the UK and abroad. But we're also one of the Tier 1 framework contractors to Tideway, which is the organisation we'll talk about today. So we're there providing particular support, and I've been seconded into the Tideway project for 2 years as head of change management to work in the controls function to support the development and now supporting the delivery of controls and particularly change management in that environment. So I just want to start off with a couple of premises just to lay the scene for what I'm going to be talking about for the rest of this session. As mentioned, I've delivered some projects, including really small projects, and part of the feature of those was we didn't have a controls function. So one thing I just want to put, maybe slightly controversial to start off with, there is no divine right for a project to have a controls function for us to expect we're going to be there having a fully laid out, fully formed controls function to deliver a project. That said, on the other hand, I think it's absolutely fundamental that there is a fully formed, organised controls function to add value, and it's a pivotal part of delivering a project or delivering the work of an organisation. But I just wanted to put that right up front because I think it's fundamental that there is value that is added by a controls function. And so rather than just expecting we've got a divine right to be in the organisation, we really need to look at what we're delivering, how we're delivering it, and make sure we've got the right pitch for what we do. So being in a major project like Tideway, the challenge is we haven't got long to hit the ground running. We've got to get set up, we've got to get organised, we've got to start to add value from moment one. And that's difficult when new things are starting, new people are coming in, and you haven't got that long to form and to evolve and become mature. So what I want to do for the rest of this session is talk a little bit about the Tideway project, give you an introduction to what it is, what we're doing from a controls perspective, in terms of a little bit about how we're organised, but more about the kind of things we're doing and how we've supported the project to date, and to give an insight in some of the challenges and also some of the solutions and lessons that we've found so far. So, key question, what is Tideway? This is going to be the challenging bit. Can you see the mouse? Right inside. This was actually the only bit I was really worried about. Tremendous.
I hate to break it to you, but everything we eat has to go somewhere. Yeah, I'm talking about poo. The average person has to go what? Like 365 times a year? That adds up to around 140 kilos of poo, which is more than double what I weigh, and that's just one person. Every day, London's sewer system has to deal with 1.25 billion kilos of poo. Most of this sewage gets treated at places like this. problem. The sewer system beneath our feet was designed when our city had a population of 2 million people. I mean, that's still quite a lot, but nothing compared to now. So when it rains, the system overflows, which is not good. If you imagine 8 billion toilets flushing straight into the Thames, that's how much ends up in the river every year. It's disgusting. And it's happening right now, right under our noses. Like here, at Blackfriars Bridge, where sewage can pour into the river at a rate of 50,000 kilos a second. It's just plain wrong. I mean, come on! London's one of the most impressive cities in the world, so you think someone would be doing something about this? And someone is. The Thames Tideway Tunnel is going to be 16 miles long and take 7 years to build. It's massive. But when it's done, it'll take your poo directly to the sewage works and keep it out of the river for the next 100 years or so. Which means a cleaner environment for all of us, including the fish. And as London keeps getting bigger, we'll be protected, which is good. Because we're the ones who have to live here!
Apologies. Is the mouse still up there? Bottom left. Good. Sorry about that. Having spent a lot of time working in private sector, public sector, third sector, I've worked abroad. There's something really attractive to me about working on some of the biggest projects, not just in the UK, but in the world. There's the glamour, the prestige, and that's why I find myself working on what we call the super sewer. Obviously, we've had lots of talk about high-speed 2 over the last few hours with the new route being acknowledged. This has been termed high-speed poo rather than high-speed 2. Now, as we look at this project, we've already given you a little bit of context in the video. But this probably sets out a little bit more detail, kind of what the project's seeking to do, highlighting that when we started off in London, there was a population explosion, and it got to the stage around the mid-1800s where there was open sewage in the middle of the town across London. It was just becoming ridiculous. Cholera outbreaks, and then the big stink in 1858. They decided something had to be done. And got a lovely little picture. He's really been getting into Movember. Thomas Bazalgette, absolute genius, who looked after the design and construction of the sewer network that still is in operation under London today. This is a system that was built, it started construction in the mid-1800s. When it was completed, it was built with sufficient capacity to support London up to 4 million people. But as we know, that was set up, it was a sewer system that was built for 4 million people. It only had 2 when it was being designed. Great foresight to think about the future, and what a heritage of amazing engineering projects we've got in this country, that being just one example. But London's expanded, and so the system that originally was designed to overflow, it was maybe only once or twice a year, just as an extra system, taking rivers that were above ground, below ground, putting a sewer system and taking them out into the main Thames and out into the sea. That was the original system. It was built to overflow. However, now there are nearly, over 8 million people. Population suggestion is going to go up towards 9. It's not fit for purpose. The water quality in the Thames is not good. I think you don't need to jump into it to know that at the moment. And this project is seeking to do something about it. This is part of a wider package of improvements. So the Thames Tideway Tunnel is a £4.2 billion project, but it comes from some original work done by the Thames Tideway Strategic Study Group, which around 2000 was looking at this wider environmental situation. And they came up with 3 solutions. Got sewage works upgrades, We've also got Lee Tunnel. Sewage works upgrades, ballpark figure, about 700 million. Lee Tunnel was going to be 600 million, and then Thames Tideway Tunnel of 4.2 billion. You see there how will they fit together. It's a self-cleaning tunnel, so it starts off around 30 metres deep and then goes down nearly to 70 metres deep. It's, I think, 1 metre depth to 790 metres long. For those engineers among us, that means it's self-cleansing. So it's a graduated fall, it's extremely clever. However, this is a really complicated project. And part of the reason is shown here. There's complexity all over the place. On the river, moving around. We're trying to do as much as we can as a project to be transformational, to take things off the road and to do things by the river. However, there's lots of river traffic. It's a constrained environment. We're working in some of the most difficult and challenging real estate in the world. You know how busy London is already. Think of the stakeholders, all the tourists, all of the things that happen around London. What an amazing city, but what a challenge to be working right in the middle of it. And that's just above ground. What about below ground? There's some of the challenges we've got already. The different elements that sit beneath the surface, all the different types of thing we need to plan for or be aware of, as well as thinking just about the size of tunnel that we're trying to build and how complex that is. Just to give you an idea, Northern Line is 21 metres down, Crossrail is 51 metres down. We're talking going further than that. And we're talking a tunnel that's wide enough to fit 3 London buses across side by side. Just to give an idea of what you might see, so I talked about the fact that the system was designed to overflow, so there are lots of combined sewer outflows, as we call them, CSOs, along the Thames. We've highlighted one just there. It's really subtle, it's hidden under lots of the bridges and lots of the places along the Thames, but that's unfortunately where, apologies for those preparing for lunch, that's where the sewage goes into the Thames when it overflows. As I said, it was designed to overflow maybe once or twice a year. Now it's happening on average almost once a week, and that's what we're trying to sort out through this project. But we're looking to create a bit of a new public realm in a small number of sites where we're reclaiming a little bit of ground. This really will not just be seen as a transformational thing below ground, it will have a massive impact for the Thames as well. And then finally, just to give you an idea of the interesting stuff beneath the surface, that's just a snapshot of what will happen at some of the sites where we're looking drive shafts, all the technology and engineering that goes into what's happening underneath. So let's get our controls hats on. So what does this mean for us? Well, initially, what about risk management? We're looking at this, the amount of stuff that we're doing below ground, how complex that is. So anyone looking from a perspective of risk will understand risk and uncertainty management is massive into this. There's only so much we can know as we go below ground, so we've got to be thinking about what we can plan for, but let's think about those unknowns. What's that mean for our contingency management? So we do have to manage contingency very carefully in this project. So then we're also needing to look at estimating. So a key part of our controls work in the early days was having some really knowledgeable estimators who worked really hard to bring that knowledge and insight to help us plan into what this is going to cost. As we'll talk about in a moment or two, that was key, and then securing not just the starting point for the project from a plan, but also the whole funding and the whole setup for the organisation. Just one other thing on this. This is just complicated enough as it comes, but then again with a controls hat on. One role we've got at the moment in controls and a live issue is looking at contingency. So contingency can be seen as a discretionary policy. Dip your hand in, whether you're at management level or at a contract or project level, and you can spend it on things that are nice to have, all bright, shiny ideas. Brexit's just happened. Well, it's happening. So not getting political at all, but looking at the projections for construction costs, for supply, for infrastructure costs, looking at some getting hold of people, certain materials and all the transport costs. We're suddenly in a position where we're looking at the projections and we think there are real issues there, the real uncertainty for us. That might mean that where initially we had contingency as a nice to have pot and we could use it for discretionary items, now we're thinking very seriously we completely need to look at our strategy. And therefore we really need to be careful when new changes come out or when we're looking at our design ideas to make sure we can justify everything. Because we don't want to be putting our hand in our pocket at the end of the project and finding we haven't got anything there. So we need to be continually active within controls, not just look within the project, but looking around as well. So very quickly, the wider picture for this project. So you've already seen a few pictures, you've seen the film. It's not just about something below ground. It's not just about building a tunnel. That's obviously the fundamental part of it, but there's a wider vision. And the wider vision is to reconnect London with the Thames. So there's a whole piece around this project of helping to engage with wider than just the project. And we'll look at that a little bit at the end of this presentation. So let's look at the role of controls in more detail. So as we already looked at a little bit around the where we're working, the routes through London, looking at one or two of the sites, there are lots of different stakeholders here. So as we've been building the plan, forming the baseline for the project, we've had to acknowledge that our baseline, the information we collect, the way we present it, and also who we need to engage with, relates to all of those parties. We've got stakeholders in terms of government, investors, we've got the contractors, we've got the people on the ground, we've got lots of other agencies who are really valuable partners, but all of them have their own perspective. So they will look at this project and some of them will be massively in favour because it helps them, it's a win-win. Some, we're getting on with our project, but it's starting to impact them negatively, either in disruption for the work or because actually the approach we're taking is starting to challenge their own position. And that, of course, then informs our stakeholder management. So we need to make sure that once we fix that agreement, it was a long process getting the Thames Tideway Tunnel project agreed. It was a long time getting to the stage where we had the Tideway project and the Tideway organisation formed. So we've gone to a long stage, now we're into delivery. We've agreed it, we're now set up, we're running. However, we need to be aware of those relationships to keep control of the business case and to make sure that we manage those relationships proactively and engage with them appropriately so that we protect their commitment, their perspective, and also the validity of the investment decision. So, has anyone here done the London Marathon? Just out of interest, slightly random question. Just one. Kudos. So unfortunately, for those of us who'll be like me, I've not actually done it, but every time I watch it, I'm just amazed by the amount of time it takes people to get to the start line, even before they have to start running. And in some ways, that's been metaphorical for how we've had to operate in the Tideway Tunnel project as well. So we had a lot of work that took place behind the scenes just to get to the stage where we got investment decision, we got the organisation started, we can run. And controls have been absolutely fundamental to making that work. However, there have been successes, there have been a few challenges. So literally for 2.5 years, 3 years, revision after revision after revision after revision of the estimate. Really, really hard slog from the team. We've got a few members of the team in the room at the moment and they'll know how hard it's been. But it was crucial to do a few things, to engage with the rest of the project, to tie the information together and to get a single source of the truth to make that happen. To start asking the hard questions about how the different elements of the project integrate around scope and to make sure that the scope that we're delivering is central to what we're doing. And then to make sure that we integrated well as a team. So we had all the way through an integrated controls function that did comprise estimating and cost and risk and schedule reporting. We had change in amongst that as well. So as you see, it was fundamental to get all of those disciplines working together, not in silos, but as an integrated team. And that was key, particularly as we were starting to set up the organisation when numbers were small. And there were key relationships that needed to be had with design and consents and engineering and all the other parties and finance and so on that needed to be there as part of the project to make sure we got the key information tied together so that when we started to increase the scale of the organisation, the key principles, the key documents, key systems were starting to be established and we could then start to build out and grow, but hopefully keep it all tied around our idea of the baseline. So because of the hard work that was done, accounting for different price bases, all sorts of different options, the external context changing, internal strategic direction, all of those had to be factored into the plan. But we got our licence award. Tideway is an independent regulated water company. We're developing and delivering an asset that then Thames Water needs to integrate into the rest of their network. As part of that, we got confidence to the investors because they believed that the plan stacked up. We had to get the agreement with Ofwat, so we built into Ofwat's PR14 plan. And then fundamentally, we were able to get some really, really good, solid contractors, some really great JVs in place to deliver the bulk of the works. A little shout out to Phil and Tom. We've got a session at 4 o'clock later this afternoon, which is going to be in the technology zone. We're going to be going into more detail. Both of them working for the West team, B&B contractors, and they're going to be giving more detail about how they've got to grips with delivering the work on the ground, and particularly how data and information is used to drive that from a controls perspective. Really, really interesting session, which I'd recommend you go to. But all of that is based on the fact that we started off with a plan, and we had strong foundations from the baseline. And all of the information that we'd collected. One part we've been working on now, which has been really helpful, is as we've got all the contracts in place, is to tie things together in an integrated schedule, acknowledging the contract information needs to be held and that needs to be driven through. But then how do we tie that together intelligently with milestones, in our data, in our systems, to make sure we keep an eye and keep one version of the truth, but also we can keep an eye on what's important. So we have an integrated schedule. We've also added incentives together. So So it's not necessarily, there are incentives for individual parties, but we're also incentivising the whole. And we're doing that based around a single schedule. But a few key things that we've learnt and we've pulled out. Communication with other teams is absolutely fundamental, as I mentioned. That was it within controls, but it was also within the wider organisation. We had to deal with the uncertainty, firstly, of the project's future, going through judicial reviews, and all the uncertainty around getting our organisation set, but also in terms of the scenarios that were being put forward. And it was fundamental for our controls team to keep really close to management and to the key people who are making the design and development decisions to understand what the options were, and therefore to keep really close. Because those of us who've been on the inside of projects for a long time, it's so easy to find that we think we know what the plan is, and all of a sudden there's been a discussion the night before from key members of the project, and you arrive the next morning ready to give a presentation, and all your data's suddenly out. You know, it's fundamental to make sure we've got those communication loops within the team. So as we start, the time when everyone wants all the certainty about benefits and about the detail of the project is at the start, and that's when we know the least. So record our assumptions, make realistic assumptions, but make sure we can track back and update them over time. Evolving the data and process is key, and also making sure as part of that, where we do use systems, think about the handshakes between them, because there's a lot of manual work that comes as soon as we fix ourselves into particular systems. One thing that's been pivotal to us, I think you know this topic of discussion last year's Expo from one of my colleagues, was the PBS. Our project breakdown structure is an integrated way of holding our baseline data together, looking top to bottom, coherent structure to try and drive consistency and integrate together the work breakdown structure, organisation breakdown structure, and the cost breakdown structure. So that's in effect provided the spine upon which we built our controls data. So that's how we hold in the systems, it's how we hold it for our reporting, and that's something that we've basically hung our hat on through the project so far. The challenge is, it's quite a big project, and although just a tunnel, we've got a few complexities around this which are caused by our delivery model. Now, Thames Tideway and Thames Water have got a key relationship. It's a £4.2 billion project, but Tideway is delivering £3.1 billion worth of that. Thames Water ultimately will lease the tunnel from Tideway to operate, and Tideway will operate it to provide 12 with additional capacity for their network, and then 12 will then obtain revenues from the customers. And also, Thames Water have assets existing around the site and here that could be damaged by our work. So we need to work really closely together, and so we've got all sorts of agreements about how we interrelate, how we manage change, and how we consult each other around that. We're responsible to DEFRA, and we've got an agreement that sets that up. I mentioned we've got the contractors who are in to deliver the work. We've got CH2M Hill, who are responsible for the whole of the delivery, managing, in effect, project manager to oversee that. They've been in since the start of the project. They've been driving quality and really making sure things work. They started off on the whole, and then they've moved into delivery since. And then we've got some other complicated relationships reported to Ofwat, and making sure we keep things tight. But also, we've got an agent there called the ITA, the Independent Technical Assessor, whose role is to support across the whole project to link between Thames Water, Tideway, Ofwat and DEFRA, in fact to make sure that the project's requirements are being enacted effectively. And one of the key things of driving quality within the project is that the ITA has a particular role that is focused on the controls. So it looks at what we're doing, it makes sure they're driving quality, providing an independent challenge on what we're doing, and then recycling knowledge and ideas back to us. If that wasn't complicated enough, we've also got an alliance agreement for the key parties to work together on how we operate, and then we've got a whole bunch of other things that we need to fit in with, like the DCO and Section 106 agreements. So for anyone who's involved in complexities of managing controls, and I've had to from the perspective of managing change, this scares the life out of me. And that's caused us all sorts of issues in terms of how we're working. Just for good measure, sorry, I forgot there's a license, just to add something for how Tideway operates to Ofwat. Now, that's really starting again to one of the themes that I want to pull in, is that there is a tension, there's balances, checks and balances within projects or within organisations, which controls is right at the heart of. And essentially, we've got a really key setup here at the moment where delivery wants to crack on and deliver. And particularly in a major project, there's such a desire to make sure we get to the schedule that lots of the decisions are pragmatic and they are focused around, let's just get this thing done. Now that's fine, but from a controls perspective, we're often in a position where we're at the other end of the rope, we're trying to hold things back, we're trying to enact the processes or the requirements that the exec or the controls parts of the organisation have set to make sure they've got the right information about what's going on. Back to the theme from the start, I've been in projects where there is no control function. whether it's being done by one of the members of the commercial team, or it's just a project manager with a couple of support parties who need to do the work of controls as part to do it. But I think often we're in a position where when we're forming our teams and our organisations, we'll immediately go to the functional specialists who can deliver the most mature risk or cost or schedule work that we do. What place is there for the all-rounder who understands the bigger picture and understands how they fit together? Because if you just had to pick one or two members of your controls team and said there was no more resource for any more, would that completely leave us, would we be wide open? Or have we got people who understand the bigger picture and how they fit together? The reality is at the start of lots of projects, or if we're not lucky enough to be in a major project where there is the resource to get lots of people in, we may not have access to people who are functional specialists. So therefore, I think there really is an opportunity for people to understand the wider position of controls. And I guess that would be one of my challenges today is, if you are a functional specialist, how much do you understand how your work integrates with the other members of the PMO? If you're someone who understands the general picture, maybe like myself, you came from a delivery background, or you just sit at a more strategic level, do you know the level of detail that people in your team can offer? I think if we challenge ourselves, we can then learn a bit more and start to give a more integrated offering, which is particularly helpful when we're at the outset of the project, when we need to be more dynamic and aware of what's happening before things are settled down. Back to this, the other tussle we've had here is about making sure that we understand the requirements of this project. There's a real push to then, particularly to plug and play at the start, to bring in processes from other projects, which is understandable because we needed to hit the ground running. But the crucial element is finding the best process we can, but also checking to make sure they're tailored to the environment within which we're working. And the project delivery model we just explained places particular requirements on Tideway that are absolutely unique. It's a unique regulated organisation, and as such there are some unique requirements for this project that mean every single process needs to be tested against the unique requirements of the regulated model. And to be honest, that's something the project is still working through. We're still learning, we're still getting to grips with how to make that efficient and effective. And one of the biggest challenges comes out through the change process, which I've got the joy and privilege of looking after. And ultimately it's acknowledging that we've got different processes that are set up. And with any organisation, human nature will start to have an impact. If people have a choice of how to get something done, we'll often go to the line of least resistance. So if we're in a position where we've got key things that we need to enforce as an organisation, key things that we really need from a controls perspective to keep control and sight of this project, how do we make sure we account for the human factor? That we understand if there are things that people would use rather than following the process we've set. Do we engage with them to be able to look in the whites of their eyes and understand if they're giving us the full picture? Or have we designed things so that we know where the data is, and therefore we design out any wriggle room? And one of the challenges we've got is that we've got a change process for managing our contracts that's done under NEC 3. Now, I'm a big advocate of it. I think it's great, it can be really effective. However, for us that presents a particular challenge because we need prompt decision making, we need to get things done, and we need to be collaborative at a contract level. So we've got a delivery teams working with the contractors to give quick decisions and to make sure we can drive delivery, because ultimately we have got to deliver this project on time. But on the other hand, we've got a regulatory change process that can take up to 26 weeks. Now, for anyone with a rudimentary understanding of NEC 3, you know that blows the timescales wide open. So what we need to do is make sure we've got those appropriate filters within the project to understand what the big issues are and get that as quickly as possible, and then to escalate those things up to the right people, to build the capacity of those people to understand what they are, and then to get them escalated and taken through. Because ultimately change has to come down to, is it a nice to have or is it a must do? And if it's a nice to have and we need to go through a 26-week or a longer regulatory process, there might be some internal challenges to whether that's going to be done. That's going to be only happening on a very, very rare occasion. However, we just need to make sure that we don't give ourselves in projects the way out for people to follow a process that's easy and quick and they can do something maybe beneath the radar, but ultimately it would have a wider ripple impact. Just one I'd like to flag up, getting on my change hobby horse, and also looking at benefits management and so on. It's very easy to have changes that are maybe value engineered. We start to just whittle away down at the scope. And if we're looking for a time, cost and quality perspective just within our project, sometimes we're not tying that strategically to what the view of the benefits are. It's very easy to value engineer a small change in terms of our design scope that's fine within the context of the project, but actually has a wider ripple impact that means we don't get the benefits that we promise to deliver later. Part of this then comes back to data, and I promised I wasn't going to go in large detail into the data and how we manage it. Said there's a session later on where you can find out about that on the project. But just a couple of principles is when we're starting the project, realistically, we have less information, it's lower in volume, it's lower in complexity, but as we go through the project, it's going to build. And we're in that place now where we are already seeing the level of data, the volume of work, and what we can do with this is starting to go up. But maybe going back to what I just said, when we're starting the project, if we always test ourselves, say, do we need this? Is it essential? And what value is it going to drive? Because ultimately, it's very easy to enforce our process to, in effect, tie people up in knots. So if we challenge ourselves to say, what information do we need? What are we actually going to be doing with it? And is it appropriate to this stage of the project? We've got a period cycle, so pretty much every month, but it's a 4-week, 5-week cycle. We have our period end system, and that in effect provides the drumbeat for our reporting. So everyone provides the data, then that kicks off a challenge, a review, and analysis. So obviously as part of that, we've got all sorts of dashboards, reports, all sorts of nice shiny things that we can produce. But for me, one of the key things we've identified in the project, we've been trying to take forward, but also we just need to take away for other places is, what do we actually need at this stage of the project? So things like earned value are fundamental to delivering the project. But at the early stages of the project, I'm worried, to be honest, I'm worried less about where we're going to be in 7 years' time if we're not driving the really key discussions around procurement, around design, around consents. So do we tailor the messages on the reporting, on the meetings, and what we focus on at the early stage so that we really put the focus on the things that we need to do now, as well as provide the link into the bigger picture? So things will evolve, things will grow, not just in what the level of data we collect, the organisational knowledge around it that we can put onto that, but also one of the questions we need to ask. So if we just challenge ourselves, say, what do we need now, and then how do we make sure we get the right things in place? There's a fundamental principle that we're trying to bring in around the Tideway project, which is making sure the right data is collected in the first place. So data in itself doesn't tell us a huge amount, it's nice. However, when we understand the context for that, we need to, and then also understand the perspective we need to bring to that, then we can start to drive richer conversations. So where we are very much at the project is we've been going, we started in delivery, we've got things happening on the Thames. So we're getting more and more data there. So we're starting to be able to put things more into context. We're providing the perspective of what's happening from a delivery perspective. But this is a real opportunity for the controls team to look at the plan, just to be almost that objective voice, standing back across the project and saying, because of what's happening now, this is where we'll be. Or here's some of the issues and challenges that we're likely to have because of what's going on. And even as a reference around Brexit, looking at the wider picture around the project and starting to give some intelligence about how what we're seeing outside will then need to trigger some change in what we're doing on the ground. Things bottom up, talked about getting the data in. So our whole reporting, our governance process is built upon foundation to get the data in the right system, in the right format. So as we've got a fairly large delivery structure with different partners there, one of the key issues is consistency. So actually there's almost a case of saying at the start of the project, worry less about speed and think more about data quality and data consistency. Because the longer we go on with the project, speed and efficiency will come. If we've got the right data in a consistent way, in the right system, in the right format, coming in from different parties or from one, as long as it's in the right format, we can start to do more with it. And we can start to build the pictures up over time. But I know from personal experience, the challenge, if you're sitting at a more programmed strategic level, you're trying to take that data into senior management to get them to make decisions, and you know that it's inconsistent or it's not giving you the same messages. That's really challenging. So real challenge today, if we can get the data right at the start of the process, build it up, start to add the reports, add the wider perspective, an integrated program, looking at the external context as well, we can start to have richer conversations and add more value. And ultimately, we need to get the drumbeat into the project to say we ask for data in the system, on maybe it's every week, every month, every period. Get that data in and let's review it and let's understand, because not everyone needs to ask the same questions at every level. So one real thing I think we've been learning, we've been seeing played out in the controls environment at Tideway is trying to work out what we need at this stage of the project and how that translates into the human factors and the team factors of operating it. So if being very, very generalistic and not wishing to cast aspersions, anyone here or anyone we work with, controls people in controls generally tend to like stability or tend to like having a clear picture of what's required. We can then understand what we need to do, we can think of innovations, we can think about bringing our knowledge, and once we've got the picture set, we can then start to perform, bring out what we can offer into the project program context. However, at the start of a project, everything changes all the time. And there's no space, it's not a comfortable environment, there's no space for relaxing or just expecting things to be the same. So from an individual perspective, as well as within the teams, it's really challenging. We've got lots of people coming in for a fixed term project that needs to run quickly and straight away, and everyone's got their own experience of how things work. Everyone's got their ideas of what they'd like to see, but actually, we just need to get really clear on what we need to do now, what messages people need to understand and drive the right conversations at that stage of the project, and then almost to have a balance between changing what we ask for and what we ask for and how we ask people to do it, with letting people just focus on actually being able to do the job and just get that data together. Because from personal experience, some of my colleagues here will know, every time we're asked to do something different for the next reporting period or for the next meeting, that means that someone else might have to do something different as well, or we might need to reconfigure a system, or we might need to change a process to do something a little bit different. And by the time we've done that every week for the last 6 months, that means that there's a danger of confusion for the teams of what they need. So it's a real message around how we can manage ourselves, organise the team, the processes, the structures that we operate in, to be able to give clarity about the requirements. Ultimately, though, there is a challenge to say, as characters working at the start of a major project or in an organisation, until things are in steady state, expect variability, expect there will be a need to be flexible in your approach, that maybe you won't need to put in your most complex techniques straight away, because that's not what the project needs. And that there will be a need to look at succession planning in the team. Some people will want to be in to form a project and get things set up, or to form a PMO. Some people want to be in when it's established, when it's organised. So recognise the characters within the team, think about where the pressure points are going to be for them individually, and expect that some people will be more comfortable at different stages. And so therefore team cohesion, line management, all these things about how we engage with other people as well, they really start to play out. And as I'm coming towards the end, I mentioned I was going to talk a little bit about the benefits. So when the project was initially organised, it was an investment case based on delivering something for the Thames. There was a wider picture around how this project, when it's organised, will contribute towards London and towards Thames Water and the assets. So there's all sorts of benefits that are not to do with delivering a tunnel, but it's what the tunnel will give us. It's the environment, it's the employment opportunities, it's how we'll get more women into the construction sector, it's how we'll get young offenders or other ex-offenders back into the workforce as well. It's how we'll be transformation in health and safety. There's lots of things the project is doing that will raise the bar for the construction industry, but also have a real and tangible impact on the Thames. And that's one of the reasons we've been so proud to be involved in the Tideway project. It's genuinely transformational, and it genuinely will have an impact. But as I mentioned earlier, value engineering small changes to the design could have a wider ripple effect. Decisions we take about how we do the work could also have a ripple effect in terms of impacting our wider stakeholders and starting to have a more tangible impact on our project's reputation. So we've very tangibly put two things into our processes to make sure we consider the strategic impact. We've got a legacy team, sponsors, strategic, other people looking at the strategic picture, so we engage them in the business planning process. So every year we just take a step back and say, what does this mean for our bigger picture? How does our focus need to change? And what do we need to do to make sure we're not just delivering the project, but also keeping an eye on the benefits? And we also bring it into the change process. So very few changes will have a really direct, tangible impact on these, but some of the big changes will. So we just make sure we ask those key questions in a couple of places to make sure that's considered. So as I draw in the end, there's a few thoughts here which bring in some of the thoughts that are already covered, but just wanted to put a few things down. There will always be a need to say, we need to start a project, or we need to set up our organisation. What can we use from somewhere else? But I just wanted to give a message to say, plugging and playing is great, and it's so important because there's so much knowledge there to use, but always ask the question around the context. What are the unique requirements that mean this project may be different? Either just the demands of setting something up that mean a really mature process somewhere else may not be appropriate yet because we're not mature enough at this stage, or it actually are the requirements of that set of processes different for the ones that we would want to use. Playing away was meant solely, nothing to do with relationships, it was solely meant in terms of how we engage with the rest of the organisation. I've been in enough PMOs where you're viewed as being in the ivory tower. You step back, it's just a series of transactional relationships via email or via phone. There's something really transformational about our controls team that engages with people. We've got delivery controls in the contractors, we've got controls in our delivery teams, We've got controls in our kind of more strategic core function. But one of the features that has been either a source of success or a challenge to the project has been where we've engaged either badly or well. And actually one of the challenges we've got is that particularly where requirements have changed and we've had to evolve what we do, and we've been really under pressure to develop the baseline, develop the estimate, keep track of what we're doing to stand controls up within the organisation, that kind of thing often gets lost. We're so busy at our desks trying to sort things out, going into meetings, we miss the human side of things. And so there is a real need to just consider how we engage with people so that within controls we tie things together at the various levels, but also that we also make time to get out to the rest of the organisation and take them on that journey. I'm a big advocate of the golden thread around the baseline, both top to bottom, so making sure we've got consistent data from the lowest level that we need, and we can start to add that up to make realistic things. That's why the PBS for us is so important. But also then starting to think about how cost and risk and schedule and estimating and change and benefits, all of those link together. It all focuses on scope and what we're delivering in the project. And we're looking at providing our unique perspectives on how all of those things fit together. So what's the golden thread that means if we're going to increase a bit of scope, then the cost might go up. But what about the impacts on all the other things? I don't think it's enough now to be just a risk manager and just be focused on looking at risk and not be able to understand what the other functions are doing. And I think really the demands being placed now are for us to be thinking about how we integrate our data, how we use the systems and how we use the technology that's available to us to provide richer conversations and to provide some real decision support to the management and to other people that we work with. So processes and systems alone won't succeed, so investing in people. One of the opportunities, one of the best things for me about the Tideway project is having some of the most proficient technical people that I've ever worked with, all within a couple of rooms, working together in the office. And the opportunity for learning, for mentoring, for training and development within that environment is fantastic. And that for me has been one of the best things about working on the project so far. But we need to allow time and give the expectation that people will develop their technical skills while they're in the project. I talked about the challenge of people at the start of the project wanting to develop, and some people being right for that and some people maybe being more comfortable when it's established and mature. So expect that we'll need to have some level of succession planning, that there will be people who move on within the projects. That's something we need to be organised, so the knowledge and the data that we have is not just held up in one person's head. So let's think about knowledge management and how we capture what people are doing, record our assumptions, make sure we've got our source data in a single place, make sure we've got all of that, our internal house in order, so that we're not just dependent on one key person, and we can make sure we can then move on and develop. I'm a real fan, particularly, of doing some lessons learned reviews around things like change, but also just periodically to say, where are we now? And actually, do we need to just take a step back and ask if we are thinking about the right things at the moment? Are our reports asking the right questions? Are we providing the right level of challenge? If you think about that tug of war, are we providing the right level of control within this organisation? Are we getting in the way? Do we need to back off a bit, or do we need to exert a bit more control? The old adage that was used for change management was, if you're in that place between almost the controls and the delivery side of the organisation, if only one side is shouting at you, you've probably got the balance wrong. You need to be in a place where both are shouting at you, and then you know that you've got the right level of control because you're holding everyone up. But that balance point is going to be different for every organisation. That's partly around the level of control the management wants, or it's the requirements in which you're under, or it's how much you need to focus on just getting something done. So we just need to expect there's going to be some tension, there will be some late nights, there will be some challenges, but we need to make sure it's not deemed as personal. That people are put in organisations to provide control because that's what's needed. You need a challenge, you need that. So it's not something where, I've been in some situations where it's almost viewed as a personal attack, where someone can be asking for information and it's holding things up. It's not intended to be that. It's people enacting controls to make sure that we get the right answer and we challenge each other to get the best solution. And then one final thing just wanted to bring in is about the evolution of requirements. One thing that we found has been really effective is looking for a single owner who understands what the controls team are being asked to do, or understands the requirements of, say, a particular process or a template or a report. If there's one person who manages that, has a strategic understanding of what's needed at that stage of the project and in that meeting or forum, then that person can then balance the different requirements from across an organisation. Particularly as an early stage of a project, there'll be so many people with great ideas, great knowledge and all sorts of suggestions for what we could do. that may not be right. So ideally, one person who can manage to say, is this what we need? And therefore, you've got a consistent point of contact to make sure you're doing the right things to embed controls. The final point is around controls being a service. So going back to my theme at the start, there is no divine right for controls to be there in an organisation. But for Tideway, for pretty much any organisation or major project, I'm a passionate believer that the controls is a key part of delivering that effectively. But controls is there to provide a service, to support decision making, to be that balance sometimes, to keep asking the right questions, or just to be an objective view of what needs to be done. And also just to make this project work better. So we wouldn't have got the investors, the contractors, the wider support for the project and the funding in place if we hadn't had a robust plan, if controls hadn't worked day and night to make sure that was done. So we need to help people to enjoy the journey, to be proud of what we do, but also to make sure that we are just providing a service to the rest of the project. So that will need to change as we go on. We'll need to engage effectively outside of just communicating by email and just attending in meetings. So looking outwards, making sure we're engaging effectively really is key to making it happen. So I've been proud to work in Tideway to see how the controls team has developed and supported the journey so far. We haven't always got it right, and there's lots of things we're trying to work on now, but we have got a lot to be proud of so far. So I've got, firstly, a big thank you for turning out, spending the time and also not walking out, but also please do contact me if you've got any questions, either about Tideway or about the controls work that we've done. I'll be here for the rest of the afternoon. My contact details are there if you'd like, so if you don't see me, please send me a message or drop me an email. But I think that's out of time, so I think we need to say thank you very much and enjoy your lunch.